everybody. Welcome to this week's recap of last week's lesson in class. So there was no video last week, and we're doing a recap into what we did last week. So if you it's something that you have missed the previous week and you would like to catch up on, this is the video that you should be watching to catch up on our class work. So I am Mr. Sekwebu and I will be your instructor for this lesson. And so as a recap of what we have been doing, and this, as I want to say, it's our third video as we're learning to code with Scratch. So last week, this is what we've done, and this is what you've learned so far. We looked at repeating our code whenever it is that we want to have code that we can do over and over again. We looked at repetition, and so we found out that we can tell our code the number of times that it must repeat, or we can do that forever. And so we use the block called forever in order to repeat our code, and we call that a loop. We also looked at how to make decisions using the if then else or the if then decision block, and we saw how it is that we can make decisions in our code using the if then else block. So if one option is true, then there's an action that you must take. And then we also looked at how to store input using what we call a variable. And so if I can explain what a variable is before I go further, we say that a variable is like a box that can store things. So if you have an empty box and you want to store things inside this box, you can store these things. Let's say you wanted to store names in this box, and you put a name, and you then say the name that is inside the box is Indibabale. So whenever you want to call the name Indibabale, you reach inside the box and you call out the box. And let's say you have another name that you want to replace Indibabale with. You go and put another name called Faith, and whenever you want to see what name is inside the box, you will go and check what's inside the box, and the box will tell you that I have the name called Faith. And so if you want to keep things, you can put them inside the variable, and we can call the variable to tell us what is inside of it at any given time in our program. So we've learned about storing input using variables, and then we also saw how we can play with sound. In our code, we played around with sound, and we've done so in the past, but we saw when we can play some sound in our code. And so that is what we have learned in the previous week. And this week, well, in fact, the video that we are going to work on, or the project rather that we are going to work on as we look at last week's lesson, there's a game that we are going to just play, and I'm just going to play as I explain it. So okay, there's something that I didn't do here. So basically, when we start our game, it is, we have a bowl and we have an apple. The apple is going to be falling from the sky, right? And as the apple falls from the sky, I will have to try and catch it with my bowl right here. Okay, I'm going to try to catch it with my bowl right here. Sorry about that. So as I try, the score will be at 0 when it starts, and I will be given 5 lives as it starts. And when I catch the apple, the score must go up by 1. If I miss the apple and it reaches the bottom of my playing area here, then I must lose 1 life. If I lose all 5 lives, it will then say, it will then go and say game over. It will bring the screen that says game over. And so that is what we are going to do with our game today. So we are going to keep a score, and we are also going to keep the number of lives that we have remaining as we begin our game. And so that is what we are going to do. And each time an apple is caught, it's going to make a pop sound. It must make that pop sound, and that's it. Yeah. So without using much more time, let's begin to code. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to start a new project to me. So I'm going to call it Falling Apples. Okay. Then I will save it. I will save it on my. Okay, I'll just save it on my desktop, and I will take it to my folders later on. Okay, so I'm going to delete my cat there, and I want two sprites, and the sprites are going to be an apple, and we also want a bowl. All right, we also want to have a backdrop. Okay, and we also want another backdrop, which is going to be the game over backdrop. So let's begin with that, and I'm going to select the empty backdrop right there, give it a name, call it game over. Alright, I want it to have a black background, and if I'm going very fast, you can please either make this video slower, or you can just keep going back or pausing as I go along. So now I want to make my background black, and so I'm going to first select this rectangle tool, and I will make a rectangle right here. You can see it's purple, and I will select this fill tool right here. Go and select a color. We said I want black, and then I click on my rectangle right there. You will see that my screen turns black. Then after that, I'm going to click on this, select this text tool. I will write there game over, and you can't see because the background and the text is both black. So what I want to do is to click on this select tool, take away my background, and I will resize my game over. I want to make it as big as that rectangle right there. Then I will change the color to red, and finally I will then say it must be brought to forward. Okay, so now if you see right, okay, so it is by default forward, but if it wasn't, and what you would have to do, let's say if it was at the back, you would then bring it forward like this. Okay, so we have our game over now. So we can go back to the blue sky backdrop, and we go to our code. So I'm going to start with the code for the apple. Alright, so I'm going to code our apple, and then I'm going to finish off with our bowl right here. And I just want to make our apple a bit smaller by changing its size on the size right there. So I have an apple now, and it does not move, so both of them are not moving. Both the apple and the bowl are not moving. And so the first thing that we'll do is that we want our apple to fall. Now we want our apple to fall, and what I want to explain again is, if I can take this grid right here, you will see that we are working, if I'm falling, it's working from the y-axis. So on the y-axis there is y up there, there is negative y at the bottom, or rather negative 180, and then there's x and minus side, and then there's the plus side over there. So this is the x-axis, and this is the y-axis. So whenever we want something to fall from the top to the bottom, we are going to be using the y-axis. All right, so yeah, thought let me just explain that so we understand what's going on. So basically we are going to be going this way, and for us to do that we want to come to the motion blocks because we want movement, and we want the y-axis to change. All right, so we are going to change not the x, because if I change the x you will see it goes to the right, but we want to change the y, or the value of the y-axis, by, if we want to go down, if I press now it goes up, so if I wanted to go down I will say it must go by -10. Now we have our code to drop the apple. So secondly, we don't want to keep pressing on the apple, on the change y by -10 to have it working, and so we are going to add a loop to our code so that we can just press it once and it moves all the way to the bottom without us having to click on the change by y. Okay, change y by -10. So now we can see that it is stuck at the bottom. Right, so we want to find a way that we can tell our apple to go back to where it started, and that is now where the decision block is going to come in handy, because we want our apple to, we want to first find out where is the position of our apple. All right, so by doing that we will be able to say if the apple has reached a particular position, it must take a particular action. All right, so we now know that our apple is at position -180 for the y position, right? And so we want, when it reaches this position, we want it to go to the top. So we are going to make a decision and say, let's say, okay, let me have two different if statements. So we'll say if something has happened, then it must do something else. So we'll say if, so we want to say if the position of y is equal to -180, and so if we look at motion, there is nothing that talks about position of, if the position of y is equal to something. So we don't have that code that says if position of y equals. We have to make that code on our own. So we have a standalone if statement. Okay, we also are going to look for a code that has to do with y position, and so we go to motion. At the bottom of motion we will find y position, but as you can see, this y position is not going to fit into this this shape for the if statement, which means that this y position cannot just be a standalone y position there. We need to fit it into something that is going to fit into that if statement. So we said we want to say if y position equals to something. So let's go and find the equal sign. Alright, so we'll go to operators, and I know where everything is, so that's why I know where to go. So you may want to familiarize yourself with the categories of code that we have. So we want to say now if y position, we take that y position and we slot in there, is equal to -180. So if the position of y is equal to the last known position that is recorded for us there. So to be safe, always just have this number equal to this one when you are making this game. That's not always going to be the case. So you want this number to be the same as that one there. Then we know that, okay, it's going to be checking whether this y position is equal to -180. So if it is -180, what must the apple do? We want the apple to go to the top. So we are going to say, instead of saying change now, we are going to say set the position of y to 180 positive. So now if we play our code, and you can see now it is going to the bottom. When it reaches the minus 180, it goes right again to the top. So if I can maybe make it slower so that you can see what's going on, I'm going to say change y by -10. So let's make it, so check now at this number, this y position, 10, -10, -20, -30, -40, -50. Okay, I hope it could go faster than this, but okay, let's see. Okay, now let's see, let me leave it there. Okay, so we wanted to get to minus 180, so minus 150, 160, 170, minus 180, then it sends it back to the top. If we had said anything else, let's say if we say here 100, you will see it was going to 90, 70, 60. Okay, it's going up, but anyway, if we had said it must be at let's say 110. Okay, but anyway, you get what I'm trying to say. You know, if you say it must be at 110, there, when it gets to minus 110, it goes right to the top. So we will leave it at 180, at minus 180, at minus 180. Okay. Now the other thing is that we can see that it's still coming off from the same place. You know. Okay, I can just remove this. It is still coming from the same location, so from the same position. So we want it to come from a different position all the time. Like at every time that it goes back, it must come from a different position. And so we are going to take a code block that is if go to random position. So therefore now it's going to first go to a random position, and then it's going to appear at position 180. And we also said thirdly that we also want to have a life, that whenever we catch the apple, we are going to have a life that increases, but we'll do that right at the end. For now, let's focus on the movement. All right, so now we have, let's put also a head block that is going to start our program. All right, so this head block is now going to start our program for us. So we also want for our apple, when it touches the apple, we also want it to go back to the top without reaching this minus 180. And so we are going to have another if statement, all right, just outside of this one. So please, between the forever and the if statement. So please don't put it inside, put it outside. It's not going to work if you put it inside. So what we do is that we will want to say now when it touches the bowl, it must do something. So we say if it's touching the bowl, and so we are going to look at sensing, because it has to do with sensing sprites. All right, so we want to say if touching the bowl, it must then do something. So if it touches the bowl, we want to copy this code, and we will say when it touches the bowl, it must just go to the top. Okay, you can see now once it touches the bowl, it goes right back up to the top as it was going before. Alright, so now we have our code that senses whether it's touching the bowl and also checks whether it's at minus 180. Alright, so then let's go to the bowl and actually move the bowl. So we want to create code that is going to sense when we press a key on our keyboard, and it's going to respond to that key that we have pressed on our keyboard. So this one we are going to make it very simple, and we will have a head head block, two head blocks, and one of them will say when the right key, when the right arrow is pressed, then this one is going to say when the left arrow is pressed. So let me put them this way. If the left arrow is pressed, and then the other one, if right arrow is pressed, they must do something. So if the left is pressed, we are going to say -10. If the right is pressed, it is say move 10 steps. So now if I do this, it's going to move for me. Alright, but I'm going to make it a bit quicker than what it is now. Okay, so that we can try and catch up to the apples. Okay, so there's all our movement sorted. So we have an apple that moves from top to bottom, and we have a bowl that moves from left to right. And so now we want to sort out the scoring, and also we want to calculate how many lives we have remaining. Alright, so what we want to do here is that we want to go to the apple, and we are going to now create a variable which is going to be our box that keeps the score that we have remaining, and also it's going to be keeping it's going to be keeping the score that we have, the number of apples that we caught, and it's also going to keep the lives that we have remaining. And so to do that, we are going to create a variable, and we'll go to variables, and you will see that there is my variable here. I'm going to right click and just write there score. Okay, and I'm going to have another one by making a variable, and I will call this one life, and I will make it available for all the sprites. Okay, then I click OK. Now you will see it will say set life to 0 and change life by 1, and then it says show variable life, which is showing, and it says hide variable life, but let's say it must show the variable score as well. So now we have these variables. So we want to keep one, it's going to keep the life, another one is going to keep the score. So what we want to do, first things first, when the game starts, we want the score to be at 0. Okay, so we are going to take this one that says set score to 0. So we don't want anyone to start with a score that is like 5 or 10. We must start with a score of 0. And we want to set the life to 5. So we must start with 5 lives, and then you are going to lose these lives as you go along. Alright, so we have these two variables. One is going to keep the life, and another is going to keep the score. Alright, so now when the game starts, the life starts at 5, the score starts at 0. Alright, how then now do we deduct the score? Simple. Now, because we have said set means that we are going to force this thing to be at 0. And note that I'm putting it outside the forever, because we only want this life and score to be at 0 and 5 when we start the game. So whenever we start the game, it's going to reset always, and it's going to start from there. So that's why we put it outside the if block. Otherwise the score would never go back to 0, and the life would never go back to 5 when we start the game. So we then say, instead of saying set now, because we don't want it to be set to a number, we want to change it. Okay, so we are going to change the score by 1. So we are now going to add, whenever you are able to touch the bowl, we are going to add 1 to the score that is there. Alright, so whenever you touch the ball with your bowl, we are going to change the score by 1. So inside the variable currently there is 0, but once we catch the apple, now inside the variable we have 1. Alright, so whenever we catch the apple, we are going to add 1 to the variable. Okay, so we want it when it touches the bowl, it must also have a pop sound. So let's say start sound. So it must have the sound called, so let's go to sound and select pop. Okay, so start pop sound. Okay, you can test it out on your own, and we have done this one. So when the game starts, there you see it's going to make that pop sound, and then we want to take a life. Okay, I said that very badly, but we want to deduct -1 from your life if you miss catching the apple. So now it's going to work. 4, can you see? So it's counting down now. 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, now the final thing that we want to do, because now it goes to -1, it's going to go up, it's going to go down now, -3, -4, and so forth. So what we want to do, we want to, when our lives reach 0, we want to stop the game. And I'm going to make a new code on the side right here. Okay, so I will have another head block, and this one is going to have a forever. Then I will say whenever the game starts, okay, whenever the game starts, it must forever start the game with blue sky. Okay, so you must always start the game with blue sky. So whenever we click the flag, it must start the game with blue sky. Okay, then we will say if the life equals to 0, so if this variable called life is equal to 0, where's life now? Where's life now? With variable. So if life equals to 0, then it must only then switch the backdrop to game over, and then we can stop the game. Stop all, yeah. Then we can stop the game. So let's now see. You can see the life started 0, 1, 2, 1. Now once we get to 0, it stops the game for us. And so I trust that you have enjoyed, number 1, making this game with me, and I hope that you understood everything that we spoke about. And so with that, we have come to the end of this video for today. What I want to do is maybe to just give you a summary of what we have done. We started with a summary, but I'll do it again. We have used a loop in the form of a forever loop that goes and does our code repetitively. We used a decision statement in the form of the if statement. We also saw how to set and change our variables, and then also we had a look at how we can play around with sound in our code. So until the next video, I trust that you have a good day. For more videos and to be notified when a new video comes in, hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications. Up until then, enjoy your day. Goodbye.